Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson. I'm going to start it off with this video from Hawks Podcast / MDG 650 Hawk titled, "We are here because of the insecurities of rich so-called white men," actually Edomite men, which is the biblical name for these so-called white people, though you do have Israelite foreigners out there whose line goes back to one of the 12 sons of Jacob. So even though they may look like an Edomite, they may look like another nation of people, hey, they're still an Israelite. But this Edomite, Hawk, in this video, I first saw him from several of Elder Malcolm's videos because he's used a lot of his clips in there. But hey, this guy is speaking real spicy, and hey, his sentiment lines up perfectly with biblical prophecy, because there will be a second civil war in the United States of America where these Edomites are going to go at each other's throats, left versus right, citizen versus those in the government, people in the military, fighting against each other, with those that are for Trump's orders and those that are not. Hey, very exciting times we're living in, and they are quickly coming to pass. But this is a fair use copyright disclaimer, and I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes. Started at the 4-minute 35-second mark.
We are where we are because of greed and insecurity of white men with shitloads of money. That's why we are where we are.
And with some of the points he gives, I'm sure that's the case, but that was a powerful statement he made. We are here because of the insecurities of rich Edomite men with tons of money. And, the elites, like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, you name it, which people like Trump and these other political figures are nothing but puppets of, want these things to happen. They want to create that chaos so that they can bring about that order, that new order, that great RESET, where you will have a micro C-hip implant in your body to use CBDCs, and you'll be locked into this digital grid, this digital prison, living in 15-minute cities with a social credit score and owning nothing and being happy.
Forgot what the original point of this video was. What did I start out talking about? Failure of imagination. That's it. And so it's like now, okay, so we're 9 months in. We are 9 months into Donald Trump's second term. It got way worse, way faster than I ever imagined would happen. It is so...
Hey, what did Yahweh Shai say would be taking place in, the last days? This is Matthew 24 and 22. "And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai is shortening these days for the sake of the elect, and to that much more quickly bring down Esau's rulership and bring about the kingdom of heaven. And he's on the money with that. Within these 9 months or so of Trump's presidency, he's just been, hauling ass, pushing through a lot of things out here, making a lot of moves.
So much worse right now than I thought it would be. I thought it would take him like 3 years to get to this point. It took him 9 months. And so, failure of imagination. We have to use our imagination to imagine the worst possible things, and then we have to magnify that times 10. What are the worst possible things? He's going to invoke the Insurrection Act. I would be surprised if he doesn't invoke the Insurrection Act this week. That'll be challenged in court. But it's like...
And in another video Hawk just recently did, he was saying some incidents could happen with these No Kings protests this Saturday to justify Trump more easily invoking the Insurrection Act. And, Abaratazah, something does happen. But regardless, hey, it will happen. And there will be many more boots on the ground, whether foreign or domestic. And they're going to be on the back of a lot of you Americans' necks. This is 2 Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha, which we're going to come back to. But I'm going to read verse 17. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. And what does that sound like? A state of martial law, military curfews, papers, please. You're going to need to have the right identification to move around. And then even then, depending on what you've been posting online or the opinions you've been having, you could get snatched up and sent off to a detention center.
Because he wants military troops in the streets of blue cities in blue states. Why? Because he wants the bodies of dead Americans in the streets. Dead white Americans who voted for Kamala Harris. That's what he wants. He wants the bodies of dead white Americans who voted for Kamala Harris littering the streets of blue cities and blue states.
But, that main target is you Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. It's called Jacob's Trouble for a reason. But, these other nations, especially these Edomites, are going to get rounded up into it as well. Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai is about to bring great judgment on this place. As it says in Revelation 12, verse 12, the devil is come down in great wrath because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And in Ezekiel 21, started verse 9, a great sword has been furbished to give into the hand of the slayer, Esau, and it shall be upon my people.
So how long is it going to be? How long is it going to be before he orders a drone strike on Portland? How long is it going to be before he orders a drone strike on Chicago or Baltimore or Oakland or Detroit or Philadelphia?
And there's a movie that came out, I think back in 2014 or 2015 called Dope. And it's about a Jake in, California who was selling, drugs to Edomites and stuff. And there's a scene where him and some of his friends were watching, drone strikes over in Afghanistan. And one of the Jakes in the scene said, hey, how long before something like that happens on the streets of Oakland and Crenshaw? Hey, a little bit of predictive programming. There will be drone strikes on the streets of America. And then more recently, with that movie Civil War, which came out last year, which, if you haven't seen that movie, like Elder Malcolm has said, you're borderline, sinning. But, in that movie, when the reporters were, on their way to Washington, D.C. to interview the president, some of the questions they were talking about asking him was, what made you decide to order an airstrike on U.S. citizens?
Atlanta or Milwaukee. How long is it going to be before he orders a fucking drone strike in San Francisco or Sacramento, the home of California Governor Gavin Newsom? How long is it going to be before he orders fucking Marines from 29 Palms who have been trained to break shit and kill people, to open fire on unarmed American civilians because they disagree with a fucking fat guy who's a convicted felon fraudster, adjudicated rapist. How long is it going to be before he gives that order? And what is the military going to do? That is the last big question. That's the last big question. Maybe.
And well, in that clip here, he said, what is the military going to do when those orders ultimately come down? Well, this brings me to my second clip from the brother GMS Austere Man's YouTube channel titled Army Veterans Big Mad Against Trump, Dictator in Chief. And again, fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily, simply for educational purposes. And let's see what some of these people in the military have to say. And the first one is from Richie for Congress's TikTok. Trump declares war on his own country.
Malcolm S. Ritchie, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, U.S. Army Reserve, 3 combat tours in Iraq, 32 years of service in the United States Army, Army Reserve, and Army National Guard. And I'm here today not as a candidate, making that disclaimer. I am here to express my outrage at the meeting in Quantico, Virginia, between Hegseth, Trump, and all of the senior officers in the United States military and the senior NCO Corps. Those generals, admirals, and senior NCOs sat there in stone-faced silence, listening to the most outrageous speeches ever made in United States military history by the Secretary of Defense and the President of the United States. Secretary of Defense on his ridiculous rant trying to take to school generals, admirals, senior NCOs with 10 times the leadership ability, the education, and the experience that the failed Major Hegseth could ever begin to understand. And then they have to listen to the cognitively declined President of the United States, who I would now name as Dictator of the United States, tell this audience that they will be expected to wage war against the American people. That's exactly what Trump said. So don't get on here and try to tell me that he didn't say it. Training grounds in American cities. What does that mean? They're going to go in locked and loaded into American cities, American neighborhoods, and use American citizens as pop-up targets on a live fire training range? This is absolutely astounding abuse of power, which makes, by my estimation, Donald Trump a domestic enemy of the Constitution. Because my oath is to the Constitution, and don't you think for 1 minute, Mr. Trump, that there aren't millions of other veterans and retirees that feel exactly the same way. We are enraged. We are beyond enraged. And we will protest peacefully. And we will go out and vote for the candidates of our choice in the 2026 midterm election, which you better not even try to stop. If you try to stop that by force, that's the nightmare scenario. And I'm not saying by violence, I'm saying politically, basically, you're done, Trump. You're done, Hegseth.
And, he can't come out and outright say, look, me and men I've had under my command or, just disgruntled veterans out here, active duty, are going to take to the streets, and use that training on those that, on Uncle Sam that trained them. But we know according to prophecy that that's what it's going to get to. And how much more is that going to be exacerbated when U.S. citizens get put down in the streets, people's family members, not just so-called illegal immigrants get rounded up and sent to Alligator, Alcatraz, or especially these food shortages hit out here. But you heard what he said. I have an oath, to the Constitution and not to you, which I'm going to uphold. This is back in 2nd Esdras chapter 15, verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men. And sedition means conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch, which is just what that statement was, and invading one another, a physical action. And you don't invade somebody with nice language, you invade somebody with brute force. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, the president, the governor, the mayor, these senators, these congressmen, or the authorities that uphold the system, like the police or the military, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. As it said in the book of Judges, every man did what was right in his own eyes in those days, and they're going to do the same thing in these days coming forward. Damn it. Go back.
Malcolm S. Ritchie, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, U.S. Army Reserve, 3 combat. Trump, a domestic enemy of the Constitution. Because my oath is to the Constitution, and don't you think for 1 minute, Mr. Trump, that there aren't millions of other veterans and retirees that feel exactly the same way. We are enraged. We are beyond enraged. And we will protest peacefully. And we will go out and vote for the candidates of our choice in the 2026 midterm election, which you better not even try to stop. If you try to stop that by force, that's the nightmare scenario. And I'm not saying by violence, I'm saying politically, basically, you're done, Trump. You're done, Hegseth. It won't be long before you're politically thrown down that dark, deep hole. But don't think it's not going to cause a lot of trauma on the American people as they clutch to the roots of the hole on the way down, trying to survive something that they cannot possibly survive, because this nation is a republic and it will not fall to a fascist regime.
Hey, this country's already been bought and paid for by the elites. And I mean, look at who, Donald Trump openly shows his allegiance to. He's MAGA, make Israel great again, not MAGA. Which even then, when you go to the origins of that term MAGA, it goes back to a top-level warlock. Sorcerer.
You're pissed off, man.
I'm hot right now, Don. I'm
No,
fucking hot.
you have every right to be hot.
Donald Trump was talking to reporters and told them anybody who protests his military parade on Saturday will be met with very heavy force. Let me interpret this for anybody who may fucking think this is not a big deal. Tyranny is defined by government oppression of our human and civil rights. This is a civil, constitutionally protected right to assemble, to protest, to speak our voices, to speak our mind. We are allowed to protest as long as we do it within the confines of the law. And when the government is telling you that that protest will be met with governmental force, ladies and gentlemen, we have entered a new era of America. This is unacceptable. This is disgusting. This is tyranny.
It's tyranny by an autocrat who said he wanted to be a dictator on day one. This is not what America is supposed to be. But I'm nervous for us. Because what president would say, if you exercise your rights under the Constitution, that you're going to be met with force?
And
what
Don,
president says that's not a real president. That's a fucking dictator.
I think it was, George W. Bush Jr. that said the Constitution is just a piece of paper. But let's go to Isaiah chapter 19, verse 4. And the Egyptians, and this is speaking of the spiritual Egyptians as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8, America, and the Egyptians, the Americans will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord, Yahweh of hosts. And hey, with the way Trump's been moving, he looks like that fierce king and that cruel Lord, the dictator in chief.
Don, I want you to close your eyes and imagine Barack Obama saying those words.
Oh my gosh, the right would have gone crazy.
I'm going to go ahead and tell Donald Trump and all his sycophants this. Fuck you. I'll see you Saturday.
October 4th. So this is going to be a little bit longer than usual. If you have followed me for any length of time, you know that my father served in World War II. He was a replacement, as the saying goes, a young 18, 19-year-old kid who was in Patton's Third Army and, landed in Marseille, went through the Battle of the Bulge, and ended up helping to liberate Dachau. This quote struck home with me. This is from Adam Parkinson. He's in a group called Vets Against Trump. Quote, I've watched men bleed out in the Ardennes for a flag you're not fit to hold, let alone wrap yourself in. You think bluster is bravery. I led men through hell. You couldn't march through rain without whining about your hair. You dodged the draft, praised dictators, and called that strength. I stared down Rommel's panzers and pissed in the Rhine. You ran from bone spurs and hid behind Twitter like a spoiled child playing general. You talk about purging patriots and jailing dissenters. That's not power. That's cowardice in a cheap suit and a clip-on tie. I fought Nazis. You invite them. I liberated camps. You threatened to build new ones. I defended democracy with a .45 and a tank. You disgrace it with a pen and a podium. So let's be clear, sunshine. If you'd stood in front of me in '44 spewing this treasonous filth, I'd have you court-martialed so fast your gold toilet would have flushed itself. You're a disgrace to the presidency and this republic. And if you keep dragging this country toward dictatorship, history won't salute you, it'll spit. Army Staff Sergeant who fought World War II, shared by Vets Against Trump. It sums it up perfectly. I think my father is turning in his grave. He knew the difference between bluster and real men. Thanks. Talk soon.
So apparently the governor of Texas has deployed the Texas National Guard to Chicago. Now, why is that a really bad thing? Well, to understand that, you need to understand two things. One, the words state and country are relatively interchangeable. The word country refers to like a physical location, and the word state generally refers to a governmental entity. You could say the state of Israel. You could also say the country of Israel, and it's almost the same thing. Thing number two that you need to understand, the United States of America is a country, but it's not a state. It is a collection of states that have come together and decided to form a union and kind of oversee each other and help each other out. So, what this means is that the state of Texas has effectively invaded the state of Chicago. Now, if Chicago or the state of Illinois, if the state of Illinois had requested that assistance, that would be different. That is why we can do things like send Texas, Kansas, Nebraska National Guard to Louisiana to help with flood assistance during hurricanes and things of that nature. But if a state has said, we do not want you here, and another state sends their military anyway, that is by definition an invasion of force.
This is Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2, which probably going to end up closing out back on this verse. And I will set the Egyptians, the Americans against the Americans, civil war, and they shall fight, not talk. They shall fight, everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city and kingdom against kingdom. what that Edomite just say? The Texas National Guard being deployed to Chicago without a formal request is pretty much an invasion of one state against another, city against city, kingdom against kingdom.
I mean, it just is. It just is. Effectively, technically, the state of Texas has invaded the state of Illinois. And I don't know what to do with that information. All I can say is, to the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago, stand your ground. You're doing a great job. Do not.
And now we'll go back. Back in this clip.
Big question. That's the last big question. Maybe. There may be two questions. But one of the two last big questions is, what is the military going to do? The next to last big question is, what are we going to do? When are we going to actually fight back with weaponry?
When are we going to actually fight back with weaponry? And there shall be sedition among men and invading one another.
Civilians on the left. We have 425 million guns in this country. They are not all owned by the right. I have 6. I have 1,000 rounds of ammunition for each one of them. When does that point come? This is not how I envision spending my...
Hey, it's coming very soon. To a city, to a neighborhood, to a street near you. Back in 2 Esdras chapter 15, verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. That goes into many things. One race against another, one class against another, one political group against another, citizen against government, military against military, citizen against immigrant, citizen against foreign troops, shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And that modern day sword, especially in America, is the gun. And what did that guy Hawk just say? I got 6 guns with 1,000 rounds between each of them. For there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, for because of their pride the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Violence and destruction on the streets of America. So now let's go back and reread Isaiah 19 verse 2. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight, everyone against his brother and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere, Akim and Atwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time.